What technology are you interested in exploring further that is sustainable? Hello, everyone. My name is Tessa. You are at the Futurist Mindset with Fifth Avenue Capital, and I would love to introduce you to Reagan Rodriguez. Reagan is a futurist that teaches stratosphere wealthy legacy families how to become impact investors. Hi, Reagan.
Hello. I was slightly distracted, but I'm on. You've got my attention now. How are you on this? How are you this afternoon?
I'm wonderful. And I know we have a full house today, so we have lots of people to introduce.
We do. Let's do this. What I'm going to do is talk a little bit about what I want to go over. And that is, how can cities mitigate climate change? We're actually having a little bit of a discussion before we kind of went live here. And Tessa was talking about how her expertise in AI and how that can be used as well. We also talked about, with a lot of the gentlemen you see on here, we talked a few days ago about how who really has the power to act and govern, right? I'm referring to like urban climate governments, right? And how that can be a complex process. We also kind of discussed about policy entrepreneurs. So here's what I want to talk on. I have somebody else that wasn't able to join us. He's in class right now, and he has quite a class. He doesn't finish until 9 o'clock. So I asked Robert if he would maybe type up an email. And Robert has a very interesting background. His undergrad was at Dartmouth, which actually was a school I would have wanted to have gone to in New Hampshire. It's an Ivy League. And now he's getting his MBA. He's here in Miami. So he and I got together for a cup of coffee, I don't know, about a week ago. And I said, can you give me an example? And he said to me, well, my parents are the only house on their street to have solar panels. They estimate, that solar panels will replace 75% by cost of the electricity and fuel gas that they were using previously. He mentioned to me that his parents also have an electric car, so they recharge that at home. They have smart thermostats that they know when they're not at home, they can turn down the heat or air, whatever. I have that access as well. They have rechargeable batteries that are available to power the house when needed. He also mentioned to me that they are the only house to have sustainable technology in their entire street. So if more people and businesses had this technology, then their energy use would decrease significantly. Last part that he mentioned is that smart thermostats and rechargeable batteries are just two AI-driven products that can revolutionize energy usage and minimize costs. So the convergence of sustainable technology and AI really does have that potential to enable a collective behavioral change that is crucial, for achieving net zero goals, shifting towards a greener, more efficient future. So on that note, I actually want to pick on Mateo, because Mateo sent me an email. Was it just yesterday or was it 2 days ago, Mateo?
Yesterday.
Yes. Oh, and you and I had a Zoom 2 days before that or something like that, right?
Right.
And one of the things that we talked on every so often, Mateo not only makes the drive from Fort Myers all the way to Miami to see me and then drives back, and he does it because what I like about him is he's such a sponge and he likes to learn. And he's like taking notes. He's got something with him and he always likes to ask. So when he sends me an email for us to have a Zoom, he's already prepared. And he says, I want to collaborate with you. I want to talk with you on some ideas I have. And I always say yes, right? Maybe not right away, but I say, hey, I'm busy this week. Let's work on next week. So this week, we had a good conversation, and then it was followed up with an email with an idea that he had. And I actually didn't know about green metal. Did you know this, Tessa, that there's such that, right? So I learned something from Mateo. I learned something else from you, Mateo, the last time you and I got together and had all that sushi. I'll get into what I learned from you last time. Okay. It was only one thing, but it was a big thing. On that note, Mateo, why don't you share a little bit about the green metal steel that you found, please?
Yeah, sure. Thank you. Thank you, Reagan. So, like you said, I discovered this company a couple months back. This company is called H2 Green Steel. They're
Uh-huh.
based in Boden, Sweden. And so they're the first of its kind in the world in terms of using two different types of technologies. So there's the product green steel that's
Yes.
used for, it's a multifunctional material. So
Uh-huh.
you can think of industries like the automotive industry, distribution, piping, renewable energy. Many different industries utilize steel, and they utilize what's called hydrogen power. I believe they call it hydrogen reduction. So the whole point of that is to power the low carbon product by a net zero uh, energy process, which is what the hydrogen is for. So they're building this enormous plant. They're fairly expensive. It's around $5 to $6 billion.
Yo, where did you tell me
So
this plant was? Is it in the US? I would think it's not.
no, it's in Sweden,
That's
Boden,
right.
Sweden.
That was going to be my guess. Or I thought Denmark, something like so. Yeah.
Right, right. So the key thing is what do they do and why does it matter and what is the problem? Well, the problem
Uh-huh.
is something you touched about on, which is about these really dirty industries that are pumping tons and tons of carbon into the atmosphere. So they're tackling the steel industry because the steel industry makes up around 7% global of all global emissions, which is a lot. And so their goal is by 2050 to reduce that number to around 5%, 4%. So it's pretty significant. Now, you can think of also carbon capture. That's another technology that's used to take carbon out of the atmosphere. The reason why green steel is unique is because they are there's a lot of money flowing, a lot of capital flowing to green steel due to the
Uh-huh.
environmental benefits, the jobs, and the um, the the municipalities locally want to have it. And there's a lot of US based companies that want to start building their own green steel. Now, due to the high costs of hydrogen plants or
Uh-huh.
nuclear plants or whatever else, you can produce the steel with what's already on the energy grid here in the US. So,
Gotcha.
solar, wind, you can still produce the material. The market is projected to by 2032 to go to
Uh-huh.
about $600 billion. It's supposed to be a $600 billion market. That's a
Really?
projection. Um, so there's, and I believe per year it's going to be 192% compound growth year over year.
Sure.
So that's the information. It's an emerging market, and so I couldn't find any information about the direct costs, like the structural costs. But I did find information about how they're being competitive in terms of the energy costs. So
Right.
they put they put it around $10 to $20 per kilowatt, and
Uh-huh.
which is but that's competitive. It's a good price. So it's going to take time for the hydrogen production side for those costs to subside. But in terms of producing the steel, we could be doing that right now in the U.S.
Sure.
with our current energy system. So I think it's a
Well,
great idea.
it is. One of the things I learned at Oxford in my sustainable energy class is that although manufacturing steel or rebar is horrible for the environment, lets out a lot of, they're not going to ever stop it because even the environmentalists out there, they know a fact. And the fact is that there's such a demand for steel, for metal, right? There's the supply and demand for it. So what one of the things I had to remember write a paper on. So what would you say to a steel manufacturing plant? And the only thing I could come up with is solar power on the roof that would offset it. Now I know Mateo and I talked about this, and I said I know another strategy. You may like this, Tessa. I thought once I get things going with Worthy Futures, hiring somebody that would call on steel manufacturing plants and say that we could plant trees around it, all around the manufacturing plant, so it would kind of offset it.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Mateo. That was great. I'll get back to you later on that. Santino's from Argentina. He lives in Argentina. So he's on Zoom in Argentina right now. And he also kind of met me more kind of like you did, Sad, and sent me an email. And from there, we connected. I know that Santino, on our first kind of interview that we had, this is bold. You'll appreciate this, Tessa. He starts pitching me on his idea and his technology on the interview. I mean, that's an entrepreneur right there.
Good for you.
Santino, yeah. So Santino, you can talk on whatever you want, really. Would you like to talk on your new kind of technology, your idea that you have? Do you want to talk a little bit about some ideas of helping the environment? Go ahead. The floor is yours, Santino.
Okay, thank you. The latest idea that I have received and developed is like to structure solar farms on water surface. It has like many advantages from the difference to develop the solar farm in on the land surface. From a long research,
Yes.
I knew that the biggest solar farm on a water surface is currently under development near Singapore.
Yes.
Well, and it has a cost around $1.5 billion.
Okay.
And it can produce near 300 megawatts. So the main idea is to start developing these solar farms for those countries that don't have such a big space like the US, but I think personally that the US can take advantage of this type of technology.
Muy bien. Gracias, Santino. Very, very well said. Tessa, before we now pick on Saad, I actually do want to hear from you because I know that you are kind of one of the early adapters to AI, and you were just saying that you do feel the AI and the environment do go together. They're not opposites. Before we pick on Saad, do you want to talk a little bit about that and what you meant, please, Tessa?
Yes, of course. Well, I mean, obviously AI can make us, it gives us so much power. We can do everything faster. So, calculating data. I know we talked about solar panels and my dad worked on the solar panel project where it turns the leaves towards the sun. And theoretically, that's based on time of day and maybe some charts, right? But if you have AI to pair that with, now you can make fast decisions on current conditions, and situations around you. So I just think that AI has so much potential. We're writing code, we're, creating apps, but if we can get answers faster as a human species, we're going to be able to create so much more, solve so many more life problems, planetary problems. And of course, if we have that, if we're saving time, we can put it into the environment. And in my opinion, if it's faster, we should be contributing and helping the environment too. But I love that, we could calculate data faster and that could produce more electricity for us.
Thank you. Thank you. Saad, right now you're on, there we go. You would know that you were on mute. Buddy, I'd love to hear from you. I just still remember our first email. And I'll get into it later, but just how you were very honest with me when I asked you a question, right?
Yeah, yes.
And we were talking about email. I think at first it didn't have his first name. And I was like somewhat skeptical, like thinking, is this real? I'm like, who are you? Why didn't you put your first name on there? You know what? It all worked out. Sad, why don't you talk a little bit, please, on kind of your idea of how AI can help the environment or whatever you want to discuss?
Sure, sure. Thank you. First of all, I completely agree with Tessa on making everything faster with the power of AI. To give you a little 10-second background, I have an AI company right now, and we are building a B2B SaaS platform. Whatever a team of 30 salespeople can do in 3 months, our tool can do in 3 hours. And so now talking about sustainability in respect to what we are discussing today with AI, I think in our current landscape, achieving sustainability is not just another like kind of a buzzword, right? I think we should all strive toward it and have that net zero emission. That should be our goal. So within this context, I think that AI is our crucial ally. And research indicates that what I read, I think a couple of days ago, is with AI, we can reduce our greenhouse gas emission by 4% overall by the whole world by 2030. And now taking in my company to like how we are going toward this net zero emission and try to bring the sustainability in this is we are leveraging this potential of AI. Our platform, as I mentioned before, can do what our team of 30 can do in 3 months, in 3 hours. So it not only reduces the carbon footprint associated with that traditional sales method, but it also minimizes travel and paper use and all of other office energy consumption. So even though it might not seem a lot, but we're contributing to a larger goal of reducing emissions. And we are drawing this inspiration from smart technology like in homes. And as Matteo mentioned before about the green steel, and then you mentioned about Robert, I think before, solar panels. So we took similar approach from there. And we are trying to do our best in this sustainability approach and take that as an example to cut the usage of in energy user by 10% in the next couple of years too. But yeah, that's my overall view about this whole sustainability thing combined with AI. And I think we had a really important and crucial time right now where I think we have a lot of leverage. If we use AI, we can definitely go to that net zero in a couple of years.
Thank you, Seth. Thank you very much. I'll say this, mentioning on how we've gotten along ever since the first time and we've kept in touch. Better story would be about Matteo. I mentioned that I would get into that later. As you guys might imagine, I get quite a bit of inquiries, especially when it comes to people that want to work here. And I get a lot of college students that say, oh, I'd like to work in venture capital. I'd like to work in this. And I don't take most of them, right? I was going to say I hit the lead. Not always. Sometimes I give a quick response. Now, I'll tell you what, with Matteo, and Matteo did not ask for an interview yet, his was more of a class project. He was very grateful that I gave him the time. But before we did, I asked him, do you know why I took the time out of my schedule to do this? You remember this, Matteo? And I said, yeah. Idea. And so he's saying he's trying to come up with something professional. Oh, is it because of this? Is it because of that? And it wasn't any of those reasons. Jimmy, I see you smiling. I took his call for the same reason I did yours. Matteo, do you remember what I told you on why the only reason I gave you my time? Do you remember what it was?
Yeah, you saw my last name.
Damn right I did. And I said, I'm going to hook up another brother. You know what? I got to help a Latino out, And I knew you were Puerto Rican. And then on the first call, he said, you're like my dad. He said, my dad can tell who's a Mexican, who's from Venezuela. I said, oh, I know in a second. I know if they're Venezuelan. I know Colombian as well. I knew that Santino was from Argentina. Now, Jimmy, you fooled me. I thought you were Mexican-American because you lived in LA. And then later when you said, yeah, but I didn't grow up in East LA. I was in South Central. We had a lot of commonality. So Tessa, as you may not imagine, but I'll just say whenever people do say, what are some of the questions you ask people when you interview people? I had someone just ask me that the other day. And I said, I don't think I'm the best person to ask, Because the typical HR professional, if they knew what the first question was I asked, they'd say, this stuff is illegal, man. You can't do that stuff. You can't say, now what nationality are you exactly? And what, but I began that way. And Mateo, you'll appreciate this because I know that on the side of being a college student, you also work as a server, right?
That's right, yeah.
Who do you think I tip more, a Caucasian or a Latino?
Tessa, Latino.
Absolutely.
The person who treats me the best. It works hard.
So on that note, I'm going to get him to side. He sends me an email, and I was tough with him. Who are you, or why are you doing this, or why are you emailing not for mentioning your first name? And so I said, before we go any further, I want you telling me, why did you not put your first and last name? And you remember he was very honest. And he's like, okay, man, I'll tell you why I didn't. Because a lot of the times in America, people might be racist towards people that are from Pakistan. And I said, I totally get what you're saying. I've been judged just by my last name. You are going to have all the time in the world with me now. Let's set up a time. So I appreciated that. Saad, I don't want to pick on you too much on this, unless you'd feel comfortable talking about it. Do you think that there is somewhat of a stereotype that people make? Do you still see that?
So I'm comfortable talking about anything.
Good.
Just gonna be straightforward with that. As far as this goes to stereotypical, scenarios, when people say they don't exist, I think they're living in their own world. Me coming from a different country here, like 8 years ago, I've seen it firsthand. I've experienced it firsthand. There's nothing wrong with it. It doesn't only stick to one nationality who do it. I've seen people from multiple different backgrounds, and when they say something to me, I'm like, you shouldn't be saying that,
Yeah, no,
you're not from here as well. Yeah,
right.
But yeah, it's totally common, and I think it's part of life. And instead of us like being sensitive about it, we should accept it. And for me, I'm accepting and moving on with it. So that's why I found an alternative instead of complaining about it as I sent you that email.
Yeah, Nanda, you're fine.
It doesn't have to be a barrier. It can be. Yeah, it doesn't have to.
Definitely.
That's right. So we'll kind of close with maybe some questions. Jimmy, do you want to go next? And then I will do the best to maybe answer some questions you might have.
Absolutely. Reagan, I just have a two-part question. The first question would be, how can you be proactive and think of the areas where you would like to improve? That would be my first question. And my second question would be, how do you develop wealth of resources in your network? Okay.
All right. The first question reminds me of something Mateo asks or goes over. So how about this? Have you guys ever heard the saying, don't reinvent the wheel? So what I'm going to say is realign it. So don't reinvent the wheel, just realign it. That's the key when learning from your mentors, right? Mentors are the people you look to when you don't know what to do on your own, right? Or when you need encouragement. They're there for idea generation, right, Mateo? That's what you and I go over when we have our meetings. And to add to their own style and genius. And all of you have your own strengths that I don't have. Okay, so as looking at it as a goal, Jimmy, let's reflect on the best aspects of your mentors and apply them with your unique style. The other thing I would recommend is be proactive and think of areas where you'd like to improve, right? So think about this. Consider your role models. What do they do in specific situations that matter? What ideas do they maybe stir up within you, right? And how can you integrate their practices into your own style? Let me finish another part that I just thought of, Jimmy. I mentioned you don't need to reinvent the wheel, right? However, you don't need to be a copy of anyone else either. You get that really well. Mateo gets that really well. Role models just help us learn what we can do better for ourselves. And then also maybe how to avoid the mistakes others have already made. Right? Does that kind of answer? And then Jimmy, let me get to your other question. I believe it was
actually how do you develop how do you develop a wealth of resources in your network?
Okay. Community and circle of influence. Think about something you've been putting off because it seems daunting, overwhelming, or challenging, right? What is one action or project you've wanted or needed help with? That's something to think on. Maybe it's connecting a particular client or putting together a large deal, right? What is it that's out there that's waiting for you? That's something for you to think about. Ask someone for help. Offer to help someone. The other thing, if you look at the how-to of it, consider your network and reach out to someone who can help you with that goal or that challenge, right? Consider what you can offer also in return, right? So even strangers or neighbors might be willing to help if given the opportunity. So let me close with the last thing. We're all born with innate talents that are meant to be shared. In mutual beneficial partnerships, people are more willing to look out for each other and share resources, which again, it reduces the cost and increases the fulfillment. Did that answer kind of the question, Jimmy?
It definitely did. Thank you so much, Reagan.
Yeah, and before we close, I'm sorry, was there something else?
No.
Before we close, I was going to say, Mateo, I mentioned that I did learn something from you. And you might even guess what it was, because every time we talk, I go back to that comment. When you and I were, speaking of 2 days ago, we talked about gluttony. Speaking of gluttony, did you and I eat a lot of sushi that day or what? Right? They bought some big boat and we're just stuffing the stuff down. In our conversation, we were talking about, because he lives on the other coast. And Jimmy, you know about that other coast there in Naples. It's completely different than the East Coast in Miami. And Mateo says, Reagan, whenever I get together here with you in Miami, I like the energy. I like the way the people are. And one of the things that we talked about the very first time we had gotten together face to face, you told me about that image in Greek mythology. Can you share it briefly? You described it perfectly. And I like that you brought that up.
Oh, right. I was talking about the hedonists and how they think that life is all about pleasure. And we use the example of the grapes. This guy is sitting relaxed and he's got the fans on him and like the ladies, and he's got every one of his desires met. Right.
So he's saying that, and I said, that sounds like not a bad thing. I mean, I'd love to have women around me fanning me and giving me grapes. And he says, do you really want that? So then, boy, this guy really educated me quite a bit. And he said, do you know what happens to a man when he's around a bunch of women? I said, what? You remember what you educated me on?
Oh, you become soft or weak-minded.
Yeah, what he really said is it lowers your testosterone. You remember that? And so then we started talking about guys I know that have 3 daughters and a wife, and they hang around only women and what that does. And I still remember during the pandemic, I was only hanging around women, right? And then I know why you're laughing, but I had one time we had this lunch thing, and it was my ex-wife and 4 other ladies. And we'd get together all the time. And all I was with is nothing but women. And then one day, I don't know why, we're having lunch at this thing and hey, will you pass the salt or whatever? Do you remember what I said happened to me, Mateo? The moment that I went to do that, I went like this and my hand went like this. And I'm like, what am I doing? And it just like the femininity comes out when you're around women. And so Mateo's like, that's why I hang around. I think the word you said is we need to hang around the brothers, because if we're around too many women, you remember that? And Mateo is right, though. When you go to Naples, you go to that other coast, all they focus on is retirement and taking time off. And they're not spending time with other guys. They're not out conquering, doing things. Go ahead, Mateo. I see you smiling. What else do you want to bring up on that?
No, I think you nailed it. It's just, yeah, just you want to keep that aggressive edge,
That's
It's
right.
hard to do that when you're comfortable.
That's right. And we don't want to be in our comfort zone. This is why I loved what you said. When you came down, I was thinking of ways that I can increase my comfort. And no, we want to step out of our comfort zone. So Tessa is good about stepping outside of her testosterone, her comfort zone.
No, I completely agree. You are what you surround yourself with. So if you need to be at a higher level, you need to be around the people who accomplish what you have, what you want to accomplish. So completely, you need to surround yourself with those people.
Yes. And having grapes fed to you and being fanned, that is not going to help you. Go ahead.
I mean, it might be good for a little bit, but it's not going to get you anywhere after that. So.
Very well said. On that note, we'll end on that.
Oh, beautiful. Well, we hope you all will hit subscribe so you can get notifications when we go live, and we'll see you all next time. Have a great week. Bye, everyone.